Welcome to the Allistair podcast. My guest in today's episode is John Embree. Massive thanks to all of you who've left a review or a rating on iTunes. I greatly appreciate it. This one from Sheldon Lancer. I always look forward to the new episodes. I love the messages, especially on mindset and positivity. Thanks so much for that one, Sheldon. This one from Marion. The episode with Paul Barnett, which was episode number 7, was terrific. Love his approach in life. Thanks so much for that one, Marion. Maybe you heard already, if you follow me on social media, I will be speaking in the UK in April and May. That will be the Lead with Purpose tour. I'll be in Edinburgh on the 27th of April. That event starts at 6 p.m. And then in Manchester the following week on the 4th of May. We will also be possibly looking at an extra further event. So look out for that on my social media with regards on how you can book your ticket. And I hope to see you there. But moving on with today's show, my guest today is someone that I have had the utmost respect when it comes to leadership and building team culture. John Embree is the CEO and Executive Director of USPTA, a position he's almost held for 10 years. He has held a wide variety of influential tennis industry roles for more than 45 years. They include serving as President of Prince Americas and President of Bala de Match. He also spent 17 years at Wilson Sporting Goods, where he held a variety of positions, including Vice President General Manager in the Racket Sports Division for 6 years. Prior to joining the USPTA in October 2012, he launched a tennis consulting practice. His client list included the USTA, Intercollegiate Tennis Association, Peter Bourwash International, and Donne USA. Amongst his many impressive achievements, he was also named on the board of directors of the International Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport, Rhode Island in 2014. Now, in my conversation with John, we speak about his greater why and purpose, how he navigated his team during the COVID times, also what a great culture looks like, and what are 2 non-negotiables for him when hiring a new team member. And as I do with all my guests, I ask them how they define success as a leader and how they define success in life. Grab a pen and paper. Trust me, you're going to get a lot from this one. Here's John Embree. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Allistair. It's always great to see you and always great to be with you.
You've been in the industry in the leadership role for over 30 years now.
45 if you want.
45. Okay, that resume needs updated then.
That's just awful. It's Jared. Just shows you how old I am.
Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Would you mind sharing with our listeners a quick overview of your leadership journey so far?
Allistair, I hesitate to talk about myself. I'm not good at it, and so I'm really not going to get into too many details. I will say that my professional journey has really been wonderful. It's not been without its ups and downs. Let me tell you, when you get fired from 2 pretty prestigious jobs, that's hard. But you got to buckle your bootstraps and you got to pull them up and you've got to respond and you've got to move on. But I got to tell you, I'm lucky because I played tennis since I was 6 years old, and to be able to make a career in a sport that I played since I was 6 and still play, that's pretty special. Not many people can say that. So I'm really lucky in that regard. So I broke it down into 4 different categories. What is my proudest achievement? My proudest achievement is that I was on the ground floor when the USTA Adult League program started. I ran 2 pilots in 1978 and 1979. And in 1980, when the USTA adopted the league program, I became the first national league administrator. And I worked at the USTA up in New York. We had no rules. We had no regulations. The NTRP was in its very infancy. And so it was like the wild, wild west. And so the fact that the USTA Adult League program is now, arguably the largest and the most successful adult program in the United States. And I say this all the time, our USPTA pros, probably 70% of their income comes from league tennis players. So really happy about that. So that's sort of my proudest achievement. And that's a lasting legacy that I feel really good about. The most fun that I've had was probably my first 7 years at Wilson when I was the director of racket sports promotions. And so my responsibility was to identify talent, whether it be junior level, college players. I had all the tour players under my auspices, responsible for all their contracts and their equipment. And the stable of athletes that we had at that particular time in the late 80s and early 90s was unsurpassed. Pete and Courier and Todd Martin and Lindsay Davenport and Stefan Edberg. And I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, it was just an incredible group of people beside Chrissy and Zena Garrison and Claudia Kotakilch and Manuela Maleva. I mean, we had the best stable of athletes without question. And it was just fun dealing with all them and dealing with all the agents and doing all their contracts, et cetera. So that was probably the most fun that I had, traveling 6 months a year, going to all the tournaments and taking care of everybody and finding new players to join our family. It was pretty special. The toughest job I've ever had was at Prince, as president of Prince in the Americas. I got hired in 2008, right when the market was crashing, right when the financial market was crashing. And we were leveraged by a private equity group and highly leveraged. And we had so much difficulty with payments from our dealers and from our distributors around the world. Cash flow was really tough. And I got blamed. I was the fall guy for it. So after 2 years, a little over 2 years, I got canned because they blamed me for, our performance during that time, which was really unfortunate, but that's sort of the way it goes. So those were 2 tough years in my life. And I don't want to have to go through those again. And the most satisfying, if I could say this, is my current job. I mean, I've been 9.5 years as CEO and executive director of the USPTA. And I really feel like I'm making a difference for our tennis professionals and for our members. And this is my swan song. This is my last gig. I'm not doing anything else until they get rid of me and throw me out of the door. But this has been my most satisfying because of the changes and the things that I've been able to impart and really helping our membership, which is the most important thing. So those are the 4 categories in thinking about my career that I would classify as something that I take really to heart.
Well, so much to dissect there. I mean, obviously I have my questions written out here, but we could go a completely different direction just with those 4 things. But
yeah,
this is what I love about you, John. And, one of my first experiences of getting to know you was, I don't know how many years ago it was now because we lose track with COVID and so on, but probably 4 or 5 years ago. It was on a car trip. I think we were maybe in Pennsylvania. Correct me. Was it at a USPTA conference there?
Yes.
And I needed to rush off to the airport. Now, here you are. First of all, I felt pretty intimidated. The big boss, the CEO, the big man is here. I needed a ride to the airport, and you offered. And that car ride to the airport was one of my most memorable as well. Showing just what humility was about, leadership by example, and that's exactly how you started this. Our chat here was on your 2 failures of getting canned by 2 jobs. Not many leaders would want to upfront that. But let me just get back to your time with Prince. And what were 1 or 2 of the lessons that you learned from that whole experience?
Well, I learned an awful lot. I learned an awful lot from the management, from the private equity group. I don't know if I ever want to work for another private equity company again because of the leverage and the stress that puts on you. Because there are a lot of things outside your control, and you unfortunately have to take that responsibility, which I understood. But when you get blamed for stuff that you didn't do, and for outside influences like the financial markets crashing all over the place and not having the kind of revenue that we wanted, that was a hard lesson to learn. So having more control of my own destiny is something that's really important for me, especially at this stage of my career. But boy, those finance, not enough people really talk about what happened in 2008 and 2009 and how it affected businesses, especially global businesses all over the world. So that was those are hard lessons to learn. And as you said, losing that job was tough on me. It was tough on my family. It was tough on me. And I realized that I couldn't wallow in self-pity. It was time to, figure out what I was going to do next. And, one thing always leads to another. One door closes, another door opens. And so fortunately, I heard that USPTA was going through a transition, and the job came up online, and I threw my hat in the ring, not thinking anything that I would be able to get it. And sure enough, it happened. So the second lesson I would learn is no matter what happens in your career and your life, a door closes, but another door will open. And as long as you're open to positive things, and as long as you're doing the right thing, and as long as you feel like you're being true to yourself, you're going to do fine. And especially in this industry, which is a small industry, and it's about relationships, which we'll talk a little bit later on, you'll do fine. But you've got to make sure that you're positive. You always have to be positive, and you always have to look for the best outcome, and it'll happen. So I really strongly believe that. I'm a little bit of a fatalist or an optimist in that regard. Good things happen to good people. And I knew I was a good person, and I knew I was doing the right thing, and it didn't work out. And so it goes. So you just move on and try to figure out, what's the next gig. And it's worked out great for me.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear, because there's a lot of people out there right now listening to this who maybe have, especially with COVID, maybe lost a job, or there's been a massive change in their life. But I just love what you said there about, when one door closes, another door opens, but you've got to keep yourself in the game, stay positive, Stay optimistic, don't hang around the pity party too long. You've got to move on, even though it is incredibly hard, especially as you mentioned there, a family, a mortgage to pay, everything like that. It can be crushing news. But John, why or what was it that made you want to become a leader in the first place? There's a lot of responsibility on a leader.
I know it sounds crazy, but honestly, it was serendipitous. It just happened. I don't know how it happened. My career path was not something that I was following. It just sort of fell into place. And I never thought coming out of college I would have the career that I would have. I played tennis in college. I played soccer in college, and I got out of school, and my father said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm not quite sure. So I'm just going to teach some tennis for a while. And let's just see what happens." And so I taught some tennis, and one thing led to another, and it's been amazing. So I'm really, really fortunate to have had the career that I have, but there wasn't anything that I planned. I didn't plan to be a leader. I just knew that I wanted to make a difference, and whatever I did, I wanted to do the best job I absolutely could and treat people with dignity and respect, and things will happen. And they did. And I'm really fortunate in that regard.
Would you say that's your greater purpose, your why? You just mentioned the word make a difference. It's one of the questions that you're going to ask me at the end, and I guess I can just sort of relate to it now. What are people going to remember about me? What are people going to think about me when I leave? And it's about making a difference. It's about making people around you feel better about themselves, improving them, giving them some sort of sense of direction and purpose. And I think that's what I've tried to do. It's making a difference not only for our members or for my team, whether it was Wilson or Prince or whatever. It's making a difference for those people around me, so they could trust me, and they could trust my decisions. They could trust the things that my vision. So that's what I would say. That's the why. I always want to try to do whatever I can to make people around me better. That's what a good teammate is, right? A good teammate is making the people better around you. And that's what I've tried to do. Love that. Now, COVID has obviously been a massive impact in all our lives these past 2 years. Hopefully, we're seeing now light at the end of the tunnel moving to 2022. But I'm touching wood right now as we speak, because we never know what's around the corner. But it's been a challenging time for many. What are some of the ways you've been able to help your team navigate through these challenging times?
Well, this has been a hard period for me personally, because I'm sort of an old school guy. I believe in collaboration and communication. And so it's strange. I came into the office every day. We had to close down. We had to give our employees the chance to go ahead and work remotely. But I knew that I had to be here in the office, because there was a lot happening with our pros out in the field, with clubs closing, and with people losing their jobs and being furloughed or whatever it may be. I knew that I had to be there. But I'm not a fan of remote work, because I think you can't be as efficient. You can't be as productive. There are too many distractions at home unless you're here in a work environment. So I'm a real big fan of being here, but I had to be adaptable. I had to be flexible. It was against sort of my grain. And I knew that, by being at home, people would be a little bit more isolated, but we obviously had to try to do the best we could to manage through all the things that we had to do. And we were really busy during those first months. If you remember, March, April, May was just terrible. The stock market went down. Everything went down. People were closing. Clubs were closing. Players and pros were out of work. And then all of a sudden, man, summer came and things rocketed. And tennis experienced this fantastic boom. And we were lucky in that regard. But what happened in those first 3 or 4 months? We had to step up and say, okay, what are we going to do to help our members? And so we decided a couple of things. We had 4 or 5 different initiatives. We created a social media landing page for our members to go to where they could go ahead and get information about what the CDC was saying, about the World Health Organization was saying, et cetera, et cetera. We offered free educational content for our pros. If they were sitting at home, we said, look, let's offer webinars. Let's offer free webinars so that they can go ahead and get their education credits while they're sitting at home. That was really important for a lot of pros to be able to have the access to do that. We hosted a virtual word conference in September. First time we've ever done that. Never done that before. And we said, well, you know what? We got to do this because no one wants to go anywhere. And so having that virtual conference and sort of breaking the mold for us in that regard was a really big deal. And we had a successful event with over 1,000 people who were registered for it. So we really felt very good about that. We provided documents on our webpage, as I mentioned, from the CDC, how clubs should handle it. In fact, one of the things we did was we produced a best practices document on what clubs should do when they open. And we knew that clubs were going to be opening in short order. So what were the best practices that other clubs were saying that they could do about cleanliness, and how they're going to do about social distancing, and what they were going to do about even cleansing their ball machines and their ball hoppers and whatever. And you remember back in the day, people were worried that all of a sudden you could transmit the disease with the tennis ball. Yeah. If you touched the tennis ball and you were sweaty, well, that's impossible because first of all, the ball is all hitting on the court all the time, and it's not going to be picked up, and you can't put it on the felt. I mean, all that, but people didn't know. There was just so many rumors about, geez, my tennis balls, what do I have to do? I have to use my own tennis balls. I can't even share them with my opponent. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. And so we had to do the best.
If you were sharing a court, you had to mark your balls. So mine would have a blue X on it, and yours would have a red X, and you couldn't pick up my balls, and vice versa.
I mean, that's because nobody really knew. The medical community didn't know. Nobody really knew what to expect, and tennis balls were a big topic of conversation about whether or not they could transmit the disease. So we had to kind of go through all that. But the good news is that tennis rebounded really quickly, because we all know that tennis and golf, outdoor activities, were really viewed as safe activities for people. And so tennis has boomed, and we're fortunate that in 2020, tennis really took off with 4 million new players coming to the game, 26% growth. And even in 21, we're seeing the same thing in 2021, a 7.5% increase of the tennis players on top of 2020. So people were viewing tennis as a healthful activity. Families who were sitting at home and couldn't send their kids away to sleepaway camps and couldn't put their kids in basketball programs or baseball programs because they were all shut down. What were they doing? They were going to Walmart and Target, buying $19 rackets, buying a can of balls, and going out to the public parks and playing. And we created this tremendous demand of people that had not experienced tennis before, or even lapsed members who couldn't go to the gyms anymore because they were closed. Lapsed members said, you know what, I'm going to start playing tennis again because I'm going to be outside. I know I'm going to be safely distanced from my players, my partners, whatever it may be. Tennis is going to be a great outlet for me. And so we as a sport grew. And that was fantastic news for our industry. My concern, though, Allistair, is that we've got all this demand for tennis, and our pros are busier than they've ever been before. Since the summer of 2020, they've never been busier. Are we going to be able to satisfy the demand? Are we going to be able to go ahead and take care of those people that want our services? But because we don't have enough pros to satisfy them, are those people going to leave the industry, and are they going to move on to something else? And that's one of my concerns. But the good news is we as a sport are generating, it's been fantastic to see. Could I have ever thought that a global pandemic would have helped grow the game? I mean, are you serious? But that's what's basically happened, and it's been fantastic. So now we've got to try to manage that growth and make sure we can satisfy those folks. But back to the point, I want to tell you that we came back after that 3 months of being away. We brought our team back in late May. Then in June, the summertime in June started spiking again. So I had to let my team go back again from basically the 4th of July weekend. But by early September 2020, we were back in full force. And our team was happy to be back. We obviously managed all of the CDC guidelines to make sure we were following everything appropriately. But we've been fully staffed since September of 2020, and it's worked out great. So here we are 18 months later, and we're still rocking.
You mentioned clubs there. There's going to be a lot of coaches or parents or people that are involved in club level sport, not only tennis. What were some of the bits of it, or what are some bits of advice you could give to club owners, club directors, managers moving forward from here? Because, we're just getting out of it now, especially in the UK as well, and Australia and places like Canada. They really prolonged their COVID restrictions, etc. But what are one or two bits of advice moving forward?
Well, I think clubs, there's a new norm. There's no question. We have learned a lot from this. And I don't think the pandemic is going to go away. We're going to be living with COVID for a long time. And there may be something else that will come along. But the lessons that we've learned about sanitization, about keeping things clean, about distancing, about the things that they'd have to do in locker rooms to make sure that everything's clean, how you handle your relationships with your students in terms of on the court. I think all those lessons have been learned, and I think people are know that those are the sort of the parameters in which we should be operating. I don't know that we're ever going to go back to being fully loosey-goosey and going back to the way we were, 3 or 4 years ago. But I think people are going to pay more attention to diseases and pandemics. They're going to be more respectful of others in terms of if they've got a cough or if they've got a cold or if they're at home, if they're not feeling well, stay at home. If you're worried about being with other people, maybe you're going to mask. And I think masking is still something that people are going to do. So I think club owners just have to be cognizant of what's going on around them with their staff and with the members that are coming in, making sure that they're doing everything they can to keep people safe. And I think everybody's going to be fine.
So really it comes down to safety, for the people that are going to be in your building, for example. But there's been such a psychological effect from this as well, because even right now, and I never was like this, but right now, someone's standing a little bit too close to me in the supermarket.
Yeah, you're worried about it.
Right. I'm still very, very nervous about it. And I was never like that. But now we're a little bit more aware of these things, that the closeness, the hugging, like you said, loosey-goosey, if you want to put it that way. Now we've got to be careful of how we approach people. Some people still don't want to shake hands. I'll be honest, I'm still a little bit hesitant. It's a good old fist pump or slap on the back. How are you? Like you said, things have changed moving forward.
They have changed. I think everybody's just got to be, what are they comfortable with? What do they feel good about? They have to make their own decisions. But at the end of the day, we've learned a lot, and it's going to help us long term. And I'm hoping that we can get back to a real good sense of normalcy, where we're at least like you talked about. You're still a little unnerved. You're still a little edgy, right? Mm-hmm. You're at an airport and you're going through an airport. Where are you going to stand, and how? Where are other people? I mean, it's all stuff that we're going to have to be concerned about. And I'm hoping that someday we're going to be able to see some of that relax. But right now, it's just part of our daily life.
John, you spent a lot of time around some high performers. When you worked for Wilson as well, you were around some of the best players in the world on a weekly basis, for example. Now in leadership as well, you surround yourself with some great leaders. But what is it, or what are the traits and commonalities you've seen in some of the best leaders?
I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a book that I refer to a lot, but I would say there are 4 or 5 qualities. Number one, being passionate, really passionate about your profession, what you're doing, having a high energy level, and people can feed off your energy, whether you're on a team of athletes or whatever, a corporate environment. People feed off positive energy and not negative energy. You got to be a great listener. You got to know what's going on in the world and what's going on with your employees, being empathetic to them in terms of their personal needs and what's going on in their lives, and you have to have a sense of humility. This is so important. It's putting the team first and always giving them credit for the organization's success, treating people with dignity and respect, whether you're the custodian or the cook or the mailroom clerk. I don't care who they are. They're just as important. They're just as much a part of the team. everyone plays a real vital role, and they should be recognized for their contribution. I had this sort of thought about an inverted triangle, and I think the frontline employees should be at the top of that triangle. So if you invert the triangle, you put your frontline employees at the top and the CEO is at the bottom, because everything funnels down this way, but nothing works until those people at the front end, at the top end, are successful. So I invert that triangle, and I want to make sure our frontline employees understand how important they are in their particular role, because they make the difference. They're the ones on the front lines dealing with our members. They're the ones that are dealing with our with the people out in the field. And if they're not successful, then I'm not going to be successful. So I'm a big believer in that.
Now, John, I visited the USPTA headquarters up in Orlando, just situated right next to the USTA, which is an amazing facility. You've got beautiful offices, modern, but that's not what culture is about. The culture for me is the experience I have in an organization or meeting somebody. That's another word for culture for me is experience. How was your experience there? And now I'd met you. I know obviously a few people at USP today, Ramona, Fred, et cetera. But, it was different to now visit your organization and see for myself what it was like. And the first thing that appealed to me was that when I parked my car and I was walking towards the entrance, there was already somebody that was holding the door open for me, making me feel special. Now, nobody had to do that. Each person that was in the building that walked past smiled and said hello. When I was being introduced to each person in their office, they stood up, and no matter how busy they were, it didn't look like I was inconveniencing them. That was something that stood out for me. It was warm. It was friendly. People made me feel special. I obviously saw the values and mission when I walked into the reception. But again, culture is not necessarily how nice your facilities are, what it says up on the wall, which, I visit a lot of colleges and organizations where they've spent thousands of dollars of their values and mission statement on the wall, but it's not happening in the corridors. It's not happening in the offices. So I want to ask you, I want to move on to culture here is great team cultures and great organizational cultures. What have you seen in those?
Well, I want to comment a little bit about the people responding to you when you walked in, as we do with every guest who walks through, when I walk people through the office. And I was raised by, terrific parents. And one of the things that my father always said to me is that when you're in a room and somebody walks into the room, you stand up. It is a sign of respect for those people. If a woman comes into the office, you stand up and you say hello and you welcome them. If a woman sits at your table, you stand up and you sit them in their seat. Those are the things that I learned at a very early age, and it's continued to carry on. I still, as old-fashioned and chivalrous as it may be, I still sit women who come to a table with my wife and I sit them down at their seat, and I always stand up for everybody and I want that same sort of respect to be exhibited by my staff when you or anybody else walks into this hall, into this office, because you're important to us, and I want our people to understand how important you are to them. So that's just a little thing that I grew up learning, and it's always stuck with me, and it won't change. But you talked about our core values being on the wall, empowering our team, serving our community, and wowing our membership. It's really important. We got to wow our membership each and every day. If every staff member remembered to do those things each day, we're going to be way ahead of the game, and we're going to be able to offer exceptional customer service to our membership. Peter Burwash has said this a lot, and I refer to him because he's a mentor of mine, but we're not in the tennis business. We're in the customer service business. And as long as you understand that, that's the most important thing. You got to be able to communicate. You got to communicate about your team's success. We can never do too much communicating. People don't like being really held in the dark. We got to be transparent. So those are just some of the things that I think that have contributed to the success of this organization and to the other organizations that I've been affiliated with in the past.
When hiring a new team member, what are 2 non-negotiables for you?
This is an easy one. I am maniacal about returning phone calls and emails right away or within 24 hours. That is a non-starter for me. I just hate the fact when people call me up and say, geez, I've called twice and I haven't heard from anybody. That just rails me. I can't stand it. I mean, I may not have the right answer for you. I may not have an answer you want to hear, but by gosh, I'm going to give you an answer. And I have to tell you, one of the people that I worked with for a long time at Wilson was a terrific regional sales manager who was the best at promotion and giving product away and handling people with promotional goods. And I would listen to him tell people that he couldn't do anything for them, that he couldn't supply them the product that they were requesting, but he made them feel so good that they left, that they hung up the phone or whatever. They said, "Oh my God, I love this company. I love this guy. I love this person." And I learned so much from Bob Schaefer because that's the spirit. I want to be able to communicate with somebody. So if I can't help you, Allistair, I'm going to at least make you feel good about my response. And you're going to know how you're going to respect my response. You may not like it, but you're going to respect it. And you're going to know that I took it seriously, whatever it is that you asked for. And so
could you share one or two examples of how you could achieve that? Because there'll be a lot of leaders listening right now where they have to say no on a daily basis to team members. And like you just mentioned, there may be someone externally. How do you make somebody feel good about themselves when you have to give them an answer no?
So, Allistair, geez, I really can't help you with this particular thing that you requested, but this is what we went through to understand your request. These are the things that we weighed all the pros and cons. We tried to figure out what was going to be in the best interest of you as well as us. And maybe we can't help you this time, but let's talk about doing something down the road. What else can we offer you maybe later on? There's something that's going to be important to you that you're going to want from us that's going to fit what we need and what you need. So those are the kinds of things that you can talk to somebody about. Just tell them the process that you went through in terms of making that decision. Tell them that you want to keep the door open for a future. So if there's something else that may come across your desk that you may want, then let's talk about that. So there are ways that people can feel really good. I mean, it's something that I feel really strongly about, that no matter what you're calling me about, no matter what you're writing about, I'm going to give you an answer right away. I'm coming back to you. That alone, people appreciate, because in this day and age, a lot of people don't get responses. They'll call somebody and they don't hear from anybody. They apply for a job. They don't hear from anybody. They never get any kind of response. And that's the communication I'm talking about. I'm going to make sure that my team responds to people within 24 hours. We have to do that because otherwise we're going to lose members, and that's not great. The other thing I would say is that we have to take ownership of your responsibility. If you're an employee, we've got to be entrepreneurial. We're going to try things out, see if they work. If they don't work, it's okay. Don't make that mistake again. But I always want people, especially new people that I bring in to the organization, if they're from the outside, they have a different perspective. And I want that different perspective. I want people to try new things and see if they work. And if they don't work, okay, but let's move on. But what I don't like is I don't want to say, well, we've always done it this way for years and it continues to be the same way. Well, that's not good enough. You can't keep doing the same things all the time and expect different results. So the famous Albert Einstein quote, you got to do things differently to get different results. And I want people to go ahead and take responsibility and try different things. And it's okay. It's okay if it doesn't quite happen to work out. So that's sort of a long-winded way of answering your question, but I hope that helps.
No, I love that first one, especially about giving bad news, if you want to say, or saying no, is that, be compassionate. Transparency was important. Tell the honest truth.
Yep.
And then don't burn bridges. Keep doors open for future endeavors.
Can I talk about that? Because that is something I really want to stress. This is a really small industry that we're in. It's all about relationships. It's not 6 degrees of separation. It's 1 degree of separation, 2 degrees of separation. So this is the kind of story that, to me, says a lot. Scotty Warner was a player at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, playing in the NCAAs. And during my Wilson days as the promotion manager, I was responsible for giving product away to people, whatever. And he was, he wasn't one of the top players in college. He may have made the round of 16 or the quarters of the NCAAs, but he had a big serve and he was a good guy. And even though he didn't fit our qualifications, I kind of slipped him some product on the side. I took care of him with some rackets and some string, and he went to Wimbledon and served the largest serve at Wimbledon with a profile racket back in 91 or 92 or whatever it was. And so, but I lost track of Scotty Warner for a while, and I really didn't know where he went or what he did when he stopped playing tennis. Well, the story goes is that I moved up in Wilson and I got asked by my national account manager, look, John, we need to go out to see the Sports Authority and make a sales call. I said, fine, let's go. So we went out to the Sports Authority and we were calling on the buyer. and I walked in the office, and it was Scott Warner. And this was a guy that I had taken care of 5 or 6 years ago and hadn't heard from in a long time. He had married Jack Smith's daughter. He was now the buyer for the tennis and racket sports category at the Sports Authority. And he looked me in the eye and he said, John, I thank you for all that you did for me when I was playing. You didn't have to do it for me because I was never one of the top players. But from this day forward, Wilson will always be our number one account.
Wow.
And I will buy more from Wilson than any other brand. And who would have thought? Who would have thought? And it just goes to show that in this industry, you never want to burn those bridges, like you said, Allistair, because somewhere down the road, you're going to come across somebody that may be really important or maybe have done a great job, and he'll thank you for doing what you did for them. If I wrote a thank you letter to a kid, or I wrote a congratulatory to a kid because he won a national championship, sure enough, 10 years later, he's doing this, and he wanted to remind me of that letter that I wrote him 10 or 15 years prior. You never know. You never know in this industry who you're going to come across and what they're going to be down the road and the impact that you're going to have on their life. And when I talked about making a difference in people's lives, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's just those small things that make such a huge difference in people.
Yeah, that's an incredible story about Scott. It's something I pass on to coaches as well and managers and leaders. It's when somebody wants to leave your organization, or maybe there'll be a few coaches listening as a player wants to go to another coach or whatever, wish them well, end the relationship as well as you can. You can control that from your side. You can't control how they're going to react. Maybe they might not return your message or whatever it may be, but finish relationships in the best way possible. Even if it hurts, you feel offended that they've left you to go somewhere else, but that is the best way, because you never know down the road where those things can change.
Well, so employees, we've had a lot of turnover in our staff, and I always have told my employees, if you're going to leave and go somewhere else, I'm perfectly fine with that. If you think the grass is greener and you want to step up and you want to do something for your family, God love you, and I want to help you and I want to support you, because they're going to leave. And I want them to talk positively about their experience here at the USPTA or at Wilson or Prince, whatever it was. People aren't going to stay forever. They're going to move on because they feel like they've got a better opportunity. And so I've always said, if there's something, if I can help you, if you need a reference, or if you need some way to use us as a springboard, no problem. I understand that. And we want to try to help you. So never feel as an employee that you're going to be guilty, that you have to feel guilty about leaving our organization, because that's not the case. You were here. You did a great job for us. Thank you for your time. Your time to move on. We all do. We all move on. And so it's you feel good about it.
In one of the previous questions, you brought up the word energy, high energy level. Now, in chapter 19 of my new book, Lead with Purpose, Make an Impact, I talk about self-leadership, something I know you are invested in yourself. Now, as a leader, how important is self-leadership, and what are some of the areas and ways you personally invest in yourself?
Honestly, Allistair, I don't think too much about my self-leadership. I got to be frank. I don't take a very academic approach to self-leadership. I do have a couple passions away from work that I pursue, and it keeps me balanced. And so that's really important for me. And I make sure I get my exercise every day, because if I use that early morning hour or hour and a half that I'm doing my exercise, and to kind of get myself focused for the day and think about what's going on. So,
do you have a morning routine, John?
Well, every morning I'm out the door at 6 o'clock. Either I walk 5 miles this morning, or I'll get on elliptical for 6 miles, or I'll run or whatever. So every morning is my time from 6 to 7:30. I'm gone. And I need that time for myself. I got to be in bed by 9 o'clock because I can't get through the day without getting some good rest.
Don't worry, I feel you.
Yeah, but to your point, I honestly, Allistair, I don't think about self-leadership, or I don't think about my leadership qualities or whatever.
Well, that is self-leadership. The fact that you do have a morning routine, and you might not consciously think of it, but you mentioned how important that was for you, not just from a physical and health point of view, but from a mental point of view. Mental health is a massive thing now as well. Well, it has always been.
It always has been. So that's how I spend my time, and play a lot of tennis still, and play a lot of golf, and enjoy my time. And of course, my family is first and foremost. So that's my routine.
Well, that's something from the last conference we were at in Las Vegas. The final day, I think it was, I don't know what day it was, the Friday or the Thursday. And, you just had an incredibly busy week there with your team and with, I don't know how many attendees there were, 400 or 500, whatever it was. But that's one of my memories of you as well. There you are in the gym later that afternoon, cranking it out on the elliptical. And then you saw me
playing tennis with you. That's right.
Saw me walking past with a tennis racket, and you were like, "Oh, hey, have you got a racket? Let's go." I mean, that's just incredible energy. So that's why I really wanted to bring self-leadership up, because you just seem like you have boundless energy.
Well, I got to tell you, Allistair, when you're at a convention like that, you're on 24/7. You got to be fully wired the whole time. You don't have any downtime. You can have your downtime when you get home, and you can have a chance to rest. But you got to understand that every person I interact with, that's an important interaction with them. They want my full energy and full time and full support and full commitment, and I have to be aloft for them. If I look disinterested, or if I'm worried about stuff or whatever, they'll pick that up, and that's not the impression. That's not what I want them to see. I want them to feel like my time with them is special, and that I value it, and I value them, and I do.
That's a great perspective. Would you say you're an extrovert or an introvert, John?
Oh, definitely extrovert. Definitely an extrovert. I am really out there. I'm always out there. I'm always championing. I'm always razzling the crowd and getting excited about stuff. That's definitely me.
I know. I mean, probably there's listeners there going, "Well, Allistair, that's a pretty obvious question. The guy is full of energy. He leads people. Of course, he's an extrovert." But I've met many leaders who are introverts, and I heard something the other day that was pretty. It was pretty interesting. Is that the difference between extroverts and introverts is that you can be introverted but still be a proactive leader. You I don't want to say talk a lot, but you have no fear in speaking, etc. But when you get back to your room after a full day, all you just want to do is not see another person. And I'll be honest, that's me. Is that I love people. I love being around people for the day. But once I get back to my room, I just need to decharge. And the difference is that extroverted people, after the day's finished, still love to go out and be around those people still. That was a funny description of the difference between introverts and extroverts, is the extroverts still want to be around people after a long day.
Well, first of all, I've never had a drink in my life. I've never had alcohol. I've never had cigarettes, never had any drugs, never had any coffee. So
you're kidding me.
No. And so, but I'm not, so I don't go out. I mean, I literally don't go out. What's really important for me is making sure I get my 8 hours of sleep. So I'm at home and in my room, 8:30, 9 o'clock, because I need to go to bed, because I know that the next morning I'm going to be rocking. But that's been a discipline for me that's been really, really important. And so I have no reason, no interest in going out and, going to a bar or hanging out at a place. That's just not what I want. It's not that I don't want to be with people. I just don't want to be in that environment. So for me, I'm really disciplined. I'm making sure that I'm monitoring my sleep and making sure I get my exercise, and I got to be wired, ready to go the next morning.
Well, got to be respectful of your time, John. So final 2 questions.
I'm good. I got a couple other things for you. So we're fine. Keep going.
All right. Awesome. What's some of the best advice you've been given when it comes to leading others?
And I thought about that, and I'm actually going to change that question around, Allistair. I'm going to say that what would be some of the best advice that I could give somebody else who wants to be in leadership positions?
I like that.
So let me talk. I've got 5 things I want to talk to you about. It's not about you. You got to make sure it's about your team. It's not what you think is right for the organization. It's not necessarily if it's going to be benefit you. You don't want to be the lightning rod. So it's not about you. You've got to deflect all that. You got to show appreciation for others who deserve a pat on the back. And you got to make sure it's genuine. It's just not something that you just want to say, yeah, I'm doing it because I got to show appreciation. It's got to be genuine. Leading by example. No job is too small, whether it's taking out the trash, whether it's picking up dirt on the floor, whether it's helping a team member at a world conference, unloading our trucks for the world conference. I am there. I'm in there doing all that stuff with my team because I want to lead by example. I also want to make sure that I don't say that I'm going to do something and then not do it. I think that's the worst thing that people can make. They overcommit and underdeliver. And I'm just the opposite. I would rather underpromise and overdeliver, because that's what's really people expect, and they'll appreciate that and they'll respect that. But if you tell me you're going to do something by a certain date, and you don't give it to me, you lost credibility in my mind. And I want to make sure that all of my team members understand that you've got to make sure you live up to those deadlines. Here's another good one. Hire the attitude and then train. You never want to hire somebody just because they got some skills, but if they've got a bad attitude, you're going to be saddled with that for a long time. And it's just going to be a real downer for the whole organization. I'd rather hire somebody that has a terrific attitude, who wants to learn, who wants to be a part of the team. I'll be able to train them in anything that they want to do. We can train them, but they're always going to be part of the team. And with that positive attitude, there's no substitute for that. So respectful leadership and careful hiring lends to really colleagues that respect each other and work well with each other. So that's really important for me. And then the fifth thing I would say in this particular regard is that communication appreciation. I take the time to write personal notes to staff when they celebrate their anniversaries. I wrote 80 Christmas cards this past holiday season to my leaders from across the country. And I just didn't sign my name on it. I wrote them all a personal message. And it took a long time. It took me about 5 to 7 minutes for every card that I wrote, because I wanted them to understand that those notes they really mean something to me. So just signing a name and saying, hey, Merry Christmas, that doesn't do it for me. I'd rather not send a card at all. So I made sure that I took the time to write personal thank you notes to them and personal thank you notes to people who come to a conference or speakers or whatever it may. They get personal notes from me because I really think that that's important, that they feel that connection. So that's sort of the 5 things I would suggest to anybody else that wants to be in a leadership role. If they could follow those 5 things, they'll be doing well.
Yep, and I can testify to that, is that you sent me an email after that conference, a week after that conference as well. So a man of his word. I'd like to ask you two questions here in one. And it's something I always love to ask leaders, is in less than 2 to 3 lines. So it's a quick answer. How do you define success as a leader?
I had this quote from Jack Murray, who was the president of Wilson Sporting Goods when I got hired back in 1986. It's 4 lines, but it's quick. A leader is one who makes sacrifices in order to set the standards for others. A leader has a keen sense of urgency and discipline. He's compassionate, and a leader does not browbeat, but encourages others to do their best. That's on my desk. And I look at that here in my office.
Love that. Second part of that question is, how do you define success for your life?
So this is a chart that a little frame that I have in my wall in my office at home. And it's called The Master in the Art of Living. The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence in whatever he does, leaving others to decide whether he's working or playing. To him, he is always doing both. That says it all for me, because I love what I do, and it is work, but it's part of my life. And that message, master in the art of living, a Chinese proverb, an ancient Chinese text. So that's in my wall in my home.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. This is something that's really come across in this conversation. Is it seems that you are really defined in your role. You're really defined in your purpose and why you're a leader, even though you didn't set out to be a leader as such, but you're defined in your 2 things in success as well, what success is for your life and what success is in your career. I think a lot of leaders struggle with those two answers. And I always believe, you need to define what success is for you in terms of your life and your career. 2 people that you would love to have lunch with, and why? They can be past or present.
Well, Arthur Ashe, Days of Grace, that book was just so fantastic. And being in the tennis world, how could you not want to spend some time with Arthur Ashe? And that's a person that I really have admired so much and respected so much for so many years. The other one is Peter Burwash. And I'll just tell you, he's been a terrific mentor of mine. And he's written this book called The Key to Great Leadership. And I want to just talk to you quickly about Peter, because he's not well. He's not healthy. I'm going to go see him. I went and saw him in June, and I'm going to go see him again in May, because He's been so important in my life and so many things that I've done. In fact, he was the one who arranged my honeymoon for my wife out in Fiji. But for Peter, universal principles of great service companies. Listen to this: lateral service, empowerment, visible leaders, statement of commitment to service, hiring the attitude, then training. That's where I got that line from. Encouraging participation or a sense of family, sense of urgency, a true concern for the customer, high level of appreciation for employees, extreme flexibility, communication at all levels, and thriving on evaluation. Those are the 12 principles that he has for great service companies. We're a great service company. And then the 25 universal qualities of great leaders: enthusiastic, expand your horizons, avid readers, which I'm not, I wish I were, conscientious note takers. I always take notes in everything I do. Set high standards in communication and practice them. Incredibly adaptable. Maximize your time. Be visionary. Be secure in your life. Hold up under pressure, which athletes do. Be self-disciplined. Make lots of mistakes, but don't repeat them. Steady in moods. Be humble. Be exemplary. Use discipline wisely. Treat everyone with respect equally. Good teachers. Opportunistic. Positive. Empathetic. Trustworthy and trusting. Have a spiritual foundation. Committed and persevering. Peter is a very special guy, and he created such a great company in Peterborough, Washington International. He's really not been well for the last 4 or 5 years, and so those are the two guys, Arthur and Peter, mean a lot to me, and I want to spend more time. If I could spend more time with Arthur, I would have, and certainly I'm going to try to spend more time with Peter as his days are winding down.
Well, it definitely looks like you surrounded yourself with some of the best people and mentors as well, John. So. Final question.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
This is a good one. This is actually a good one. I like this.
You're lying on your deathbed many, many, many years from now. What are 3 bits of wisdom or advice you would like to leave with the world?
And when I saw that question, I immediately thought of Jim Lair's book called Leading with Character. And Jim started our conference off in Las Vegas this past year, Leading with Character. And the premise of the book is very simple. People are attending a funeral of somebody that they have met, either they work for or whatever. What do they think about that person? Do they remember that they made tons and tons of money? Do they remember their accomplishments in their business? Do they remember whatever materialistic things they had? No. What they remember is how were they treated? Were they treated with dignity and respect? How did he interact with them? Whether they were that custodian that I mentioned earlier, or the cook in the kitchen, how did he treat people, and how do they remember him? And so this is really important for me. I don't care what I do in my career. I don't care what success may or may not come of me. What I care about is how people think about me. What I care is about, did I make a difference in their lives? Did they feel good when they were around me? That to me is my legacy. That's what I want my legacy to be, because it's that personal connection that there's nothing else that matters. Same thing with my family. How is my family going to feel about me when I'm long gone? And are they going to be able to live the values and breathe the values and exhibit those values that I've tried to teach them as a parent? So that's it. It's just, how are you going to be remembered when you're no longer here? And it's not so much about passing wisdom on. It's just, I want people to respect me for how I treated them and the things that I may have done for them.
Thanks so much for coming on to the show today.
Well, I'm flattered that you asked. You're a superstar. I'm indebted just to be around you. Are you kidding me? You've got so much to offer, and I'm just so positive about all the things that you've done. And I really, really would appreciate it. It was a little intimidating when you asked me to do this, because I wasn't sure I was comfortable doing this. I don't like talking about myself, but I really appreciate the opportunity to share some things with you. I don't get to do this very often. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. All the best to you, Allistair. Have a good trip overseas.
Thanks so much, John. I appreciate it. So there you have it. That was episode 9 with John Embree. Remember that just by sharing an episode of the Allistair McCall podcast, you can stand a chance to win my book, Lead with Purpose, Make an Impact. When you share an episode, remember to include the hashtag Lead with Purpose. Connect with me on social media. I'm on Twitter at Allistair McCall, Facebook Allistair McCall page, and on Instagram, Be Champion Minded. So until next time, keep making an impact.